hope you're able to see my screen and my voice is clear. Can anyone confirm on chat, please? Is my voice clear? Able to see my screen? Any challenges in looking at my screen? I hope you're able to see confirmation, Mahesh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Raghu. I have overall of 10 years of experience working on middleware products. JBoss is one of it. So today I'm going to walk through a demo on JBoss. I'm going to talk about the capabilities, functionality, the differentiation, the competitors, starting with history of it. Then I'm going to talk about the content that I'm going to discuss in our regular session starting from next week. So let me open up a running notes for you so that you'll be aware of what I'm talking about. And by the end of these sessions, we can recap what we have been talking about. So today we're going to talk about the product from JBoss, an open source product. So the first one I would like to say is this is very much an open source product. So this is an open source community. This is an open source community called JBoss. This JBoss community has developed many open source products under it, where JBoss application server is one of it, which has been renamed, which has been termed now as WildFly. So in our regular sessions, we keep on trained up. We're going to train up on WildFly 10.1 version. So that's a version been released. That's the latest version, and we're going to get knowledge more of specifically that I would share on regular sessions. Again, when we talk about this, you might be asking me about something like, there should be a question, something like why are you talking about open source? Why not enterprise? So JBoss has an enterprise support product by Red Hat. Red Hat is an official partner, official owner of enterprise product of JBoss, EAP, Enterprise Application Server. So I would be talking exclusively on open source. We do also talk about Red Hat and application server EAP as well parallelly whenever needed, where I would like to highlight the differentiation comes up. More significantly, what would be the major difference? Red Hat supports the bug fixes to the product at any point of time by interacting with the core developers of open source software. And they do have great engineers from JBoss community, who are developing WildFly, who interact with Red Hat and in providing support to your enterprise product. Again, in the market, when you see from JBoss perspective, from WildFly perspective, WildFly.org is a community. This is a community which keep on developing the product, and under this there are multiple versions that have come up. Something like I can see you JBoss app server. Let's talk about something like version a bit more 4.x onwards. I don't go beyond that. You do have 5.x with the 5 series versions. Then you would have 6.x. Then you do have 7.x. During 8.x, JBoss has been renamed by the open source community, a JBoss name has been given to the enterprise support, Red Hat, and WildFly has been renamed to 8.x. Same way, WildFly 9.x, 10.x comes into picture. When I say 10.x, I don't say 10.x, 10.0.x. Because within 10 series, you do have two products in the market right now. If you go to internet, just go to internet, just browse saying that JBoss wildfly.org. It talks about WildFly 10. But within WildFly 10, you do have two versions. Starts with WildFly 10.1 and WildFly 10. So these are the versions that keep on coming up, and it's where you need to validate the versions at any point of time. So within 10.0, this is the latest version. So we're going to start the training on this version appropriately, and we keep on working with the latest as well. So the JBoss community, they come up with three types of versioning pattern. So that's called something like software extensions. So very first one will be your final release. Then other one will be your service pattern. So there's a pattern that they have a release level. Then you have candidate release. So these are the three extension patterns that they have been released. Final version is the stable version. At any point of time, you have to focus more on the final version instead of working with the older versions, because other extensions. Stable version has all the fixes, all the support level, a standard version being released across, post testing at the in-house. Again, more on where does your JBoss support it? JBoss exclusively recommends to work on Linux operating systems. That's where this is expected. JBoss on Windows, yes. On Linux is expected to work more on, to have a robust performances. Again, within Linux, you do have multiple flavors again. You do have Red Hat, obviously that's in standard one, proprietary of the support interface product. Then you do have SUSE Linux. Then you do have Oracle Linux. So Linux flavors where the product will have a robust performance at any point. Again, if you ask me, Raghu, we have been talking about different versions. What are the versions again from enterprise level? Yes, EAP, Enterprise Application Server from Red Hat, have its own standard versioning that is being provided for your enterprise support. So I'll say bit of a compare pattern, something like 4.x onwards. Then EAP 5.x, EAP 6.1, EAP 6.4. They keep on coming up with these versioning as a stable versions. Then EAP 7 now, 7.0. So when I say the versions, they have been released as in compatible to the open source parallelly. Okay. So when you focus on this, I'll say some of the compatible patterns, something like this. Okay. Over here, EAP with WildFly.x, they have come up with EAP 6.4. During this pattern, they have come up with 6.1 as a standard version. Then EAP 5, EAP 4.x versions. With the latest version, They have come up with EAP 7.0. These are standard stable versions. Again, every version that come up with it should have support to Java. Your JBoss or WildFly is purely a Java compliant application server. When I say Java compliant application server, in the sense it's run on Java. So when I say Java has three types of editions, which you should be aware of. One is Java Standard Edition. The other one is Java Enterprise Edition. Then you have Java Micro Edition, which works with mobile. So these three editions, so these three support of resources works exclusively with three types of software bundle. One is JDK, Java Development Kit. Then you have JRE. So what is the difference between them? JDK contains all the libraries, all the modules support to Java, all the editions of your Java. But when you talk about JRE, JRE is exclusively only to do a runtime environment support. So JDK helps you to develop an application, but JRE will help you to run those developed applications from JDK. Both has difference. You can't have compilation can be done with JRE at any point of time. You need to have JDK to compile, and execution can be done with JRE and JDK because JDK does contains JRE. Here's a note point. JRE by default, it's part of JDK. But Oracle is giving you a separate installations at any point of time. If you go to Java Archive, Java 8 Archive, it will give you two different versions flavors, JDK and JRE. If you see here, Java Development Kit, Java Runtime Kit. So these two softwares are being provided at any point of time based on your requirement. Again, we have different vendors in the market from Java vendors. So Java is an Java API is an open source. So when I say open source, this can be used anywhere. Okay, anyone can use this API and they can build their own softwares. So that's where there are 4 Java vendors that they have come up. Very first one is Sun JDK, which is now acquired by Oracle. So Oracle JDK. Then also you do have IBM JDK. Then you have HP JDK. Then you have Oracle has JRocket as a software. That's one more JDK build. So these are the 4 enterprise level JDK, Java Development Kit software has been developed using open source API. Again, this is owned by Sun Microsystems. As I said earlier, Oracle acquired Sun Microsystems only for enterprise products, but not open source. So all the Oracle enterprise products, all the Sun Microsystems enterprise products are being owned by Oracle now, but not open source API. Still, open source API is a community. It's a Java community. been maintained by, which talks about it. So talking about this, let me talk about few minutes on the architecture perspective. So distributed systems is one of the key factor that plays a vital role in any of the application servers. Okay. So before I talk about this, let me talk about competitors. Who are the competitors that we have in the market for JBoss? WildFly. When I say JBoss, it's from Red Hat. When I say WildFly, it's an open source. Okay. Very first competitors would be from enterprise and stuff. Your WebLogic or WebSphere, and you have few farm PC server which supports Spring framework. This is from VMware. That's from IBM. This is from Oracle. Just think that this is from Red Hat. Then you do have open source Apache as well. Then you have one more from Oracle GlassFish. So these are the different layers of applications, different products of Oracle, vendors from Oracle, IBM, and VMware, and Apache, where they have again Apache Tomcat is an open source, and WildFly is also an open source. We'll talk about the difference between them in the next few minutes. But coming back to this, any of the flavor of an application server or any of the resources has to come up with a factor called distributed environments. So distributed systems will help you to divide the work among several independent modules. The failure of one single module has a less impact on overall system. Obviously, it doesn't matter what application server you're working with, but the environment setting up on distributed systems plays a vital role in having up an high availability, scalability, and maintainability of your environment at any point of time. So how standards helps you? As I said, we are talking about Java compliant application servers. All these servers are Java compliant. Every resource, every library has been, every resources of the module that has been built on these are built on Java. So they have to maintain. There are many advantages when you work with standardization and specification at any point of time. Either to work with distributed systems to follow as a standard. Similarly, how Java has also been maintained appropriately. The standards allows modularization of complex hardware and software from distributed perspective. And the large portion of the project costs go towards solving the business need. Here Java 7, Java EE, Java Enterprise Edition I'm talking about right now. That's the standard again. So Java Platform Enterprise Edition 7, which is in the market, that's the latest in the market, helps you to come overall distributed liabilities. Application developed with the Java EE technologies are standardized, adhering to specific guidelines, written in Java, and deployable in any compliant application server. So Java is an independent programming stuff where you can develop a piece of code and you can run on any compliant application server. It could be JBoss, Apache, or WebLogic or WebSphere. And JCP, as I said earlier, Java is an open source API been developed that's been maintained by a community called Java Community Process, JCP. So that's a process, that's a community which helps you to develop the new functionality, new implementation, new API. And this has oversight the process of moderating the future Java direction. So here is a high-level architecture about an application server from Enterprise Edition. It's not that a JBoss architecture or WebLogic architecture or WebSphere or anything. It's a Enterprise Edition application server architecture. Every application server would go in this pattern, either of the cases. So towards the left side, you have clients. So clients can of different types. You have web client, you have an applet, you have a client application. Web client is something like, I can give an example as browser. Whereas an applet, yes, you can run a piece of code either on the browser, a pop-up comes in where you can punch your credentials or punch your information in that pop-up as an applet. And you do have a client application. Let's take an example as on your hardware, on your machine. If you install Java, if you install Microsoft or any of the software, or let's take an antivirus. Antivirus is also an application that helps you to work with its own product, the functionality of the antivirus as well. When you want to upgrade or when you want to do an update of your signatures, antivirus signature, it has to do an resource being sent from your server of that particular vendor from server to your client. So a client application is something like which is running on your client desktop. So either of the way, three types of it's been published with 3 at this point of time. So the client has capability to generate a request. The client could be anything, but the way that the process is differs, but the expectation is one and the same. Particular resource it's trying to request, and if that is valid, it will get back the response. So the response handling is what the difference is from your application server layer, because when you work with web clients or the applet, obviously if you touch base with your web container, because it's a web application, the processing would be done from your web container, which interacts with the EJB container for the business logic. So interaction of containers. So there are 2 containers on the high level, it's been displayed over here, but in the background you do have other containers like HTTP container in the background that's also been maintained in your application service as a default containers. But the high level web container, EJB container are the specific containers being exposed to the outside world in the market. Because web container works with all your web applications, enterprise level applications works with EJB containers for the business logic being defined within it for your applications, which has capability to interact with third-party services. So in your application server, these are the services which is being expected as minimum at any point of time. Let me talk about it. JNDI, JAS, JMX, JMS, JDBC, JDA, RMI, JAX, WS. So JNDI is nothing but Java naming and director interface. JAS, Java authentication and authorization service. JMX, Java management extensions. This helps you to do the monitoring part. JMS, Java messaging service. JDBC, Java database connectivity. JTA, Java transactions. RMI, remote method invocations. JAG web services. WS. So these services helps you to interact with third-party integration products that that application server would integrate with. I'll give a live example, something like JNDI. This helps the object definition to be identified by the resources running on your app server to reach to the configuration that has been configured in your application server. Something like you have done some JDBC database configuration. So that's your application server expects an JNDI object configuration where the naming standard can be maintained within your application and the resource that has been configured on your application server. So the interaction would be something like the object is being identified under the specific server instance which has been configured. Same way you do have JAS, Java authentication and authorization service. This resource service helps you to interact with the directory service products like OpenLDAP, NowLDAP, Active Directory. You have Oracle Internet Directory, something like that. You have JMX, Java Management Extension. So this resource helps you to talk to mbeans in the background which is running in. Then you have JMS, Java Messaging Service. So this Java Messaging Service will help you to interact with third-party messaging products like IBM MQ or Active MQ, Hornet MQ. Anything could be coming part of it. Same way, JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. This has capability to interact with database products like Oracle or IBM DB2, or you have a Microsoft SQL Server. So there are many databases that it supports with to work appropriately, but the minimum requirement would be the specific drivers appropriate to work with it. Then you have JTA, Java transactions. Java transactions exclusively work interaction with other resources running on for the transactional level. RMI, remote method invocations. It could have capability. It also have capability to interact with other Java applications running on other destination sites. Again, it could be running on any compliant of applications, any Java compliant application server. Then JAX web services. Yes, these are third-party resources that you have. Third-party web services where it can interact with. So this service is also part of it, which works as part of your enterprise layer to interact with your containers to work with third-party integration products. Again, the web containers, as I said earlier in the diagram, you do have serverless JSPs coming into the picture. Yes, that's the Java servlet I'm talking about. So that's again a Java program being built with. You do have JSPs for a UI development that's being done. EJBs again, the business logic, business service logic is being defined appropriately. Then the JDBC I'm talking about, Java database connectivity. So this Java database connectivity does require a resource called driver I'm talking about earlier. So Java driver or JDBC driver, there are different types of drivers as well, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. Type 4 is the the latest driver that you have in the market, exclusively working with Java. So that's where the resource that you can use at any point of time. Same way JNDI. Java API for accessing naming and directory accesses services works with JNDI. So this is built on certain layers in Java to identify the resource of the configuration that is being done. So within JNDI tree is being maintained on every application server, Java compliant application server. So the developers for a particular resource of configuration, they have to do an initial context lookup that has to be done on the instance JNDI tree to identify that particular object naming. Same way, JMS is a service that I was talking about earlier. JMS is a standard API being built on Java for accessing message-oriented middleware. So when I say message-oriented middleware, anything that supports messaging concept, like IBM WebSphere, MQ, or ActiveMQ, HornetMQ. So there are multiple open source MQ as well, resources, messaging resources as well, and enterprise and non-enterprise as well. So that supports the interface of point-to-point, public subscribe domain, guarantee message delivery on the resources that it works with appropriately. Same way, JAS, Java Authentication Authorization Service, supports Java-based security framework. That's an important one again. So Java has its own security framework been built with, where the enhancements have been done to it and built their own proprietary security frameworks between the application service as well. So it supports authentication from single sign-on and pluggable authentication module, customized one at any point of time. But authorization does also works with users, groups, and roles and policies at any point of time as well. So that JBoss has its own standardization again. They maintain the customization being done to this security framework from Java. Same way, Java management extensions. So Java management extensions, as I said earlier, this is an infrastructure monitoring, management monitoring that can be done. The tool, this helps you to interact with objects which are running in the background, column builds, which helps you to work exclusively to get the runtime data or the offline and online data at any point of time. Then you have the client applications I was talking about earlier, the type of client application that does protects appropriately. So web client, and you do have proxy servers coming into picture. Again, this is one of the terminology because in one of the session in regular fashion, we're going to work with integration of Apache as a proxy server or the web server, either of the way. And of the day, we're going to use appropriately to process the request in front of your application server. So you'll have an Apache which has been installed on before of JBoss, and we're going to pass the request to get the data, any user data to do and load balancing between your cluster services of your JBoss. Then you do have firewall. Firewall also makes a major impact to your resources configurations at runtime. So it provides a filtering and it keeps out of hackers by not allowing unauthorized users at any point of time. This can also act as a proxy service and also map port requests at any point of time. So this helps you to decrease the backend network activity at any point of time. Then you do have application services that I was talking about earlier. So application service provide the services that support execution of any high available applications deployed on your end. So the major part of the application service to make sure they are working with enterprise products, enterprise applications and non-enterprise applications, support to the resources at any point of time. Then here is a high-level web application configuration for your knowledge, for high-level understanding purpose. Towards your left side, you have client applications that comes through a firewall onto the internet or without firewall onto the internet. Then it reaches out to the private network of your application server. So wherever you host it. Again, that machine has a firewall. Definitely every machine has a firewall. And where it will decrease the network usage for unauthorized users. Only authorized users have been allowed to where exclusively it works with a web server. Then exclusively the request is being forwarded to do a proxying and do a load balancing onto the app service at any point. Similar configuration without web server. From firewall, the request can directly work with app service as well. Because I already said earlier, app service does contains handling of web server at any point of time. So web server isn't the resource which helps you to handling a static content or a non-static content at any point of time. I'm sorry, I just got disconnected. I hope you're able to see my screen. Yeah. So the point I was talking about was you do have web service in front of your app service, and parallelly, without web service having in front of your app service, web service can also be maintained as an app server. So your JBoss can also act as a web server. That's an important point because by default you have an one of the web server resource that has been configured in your JBoss application service, which can take care of all static content deployment as well as all non-enterprise applications can also be hosted on it, which serves the request, which serves the need of maintaining all resources that can be maintained. So coming back to this, let's now talk about the difference between the application service. So as I said earlier, you do have competitors. So when I say competitors, what would be the major one? What would be the difference between JBoss and the WebSphere and WebLogic? Any of it. So every application server has their own set of series where they have a robust performance maintaining on their own proprietary products at any point of time. Let's say something like, I'll give you a live example. JBoss expects. So performance of these application servers can be maintained on multiple factors. Very first one will be your network layer. Then when you have network, you host hardware. When I say hardware, this combination of processor, memory, storage, and other factors comes into picture. Then you have operating system, also plays a vital role. then the allocation of the resources as well. Then coming up with application with server. Then you do have Java. Then you do have integration products. I'll give you an integration product, something like database or messaging products, LDAP. So all this comes into picture. Okay. So based on these, the performance evaluation can be done between these application level competitive products at any point of time. I'll give you a live example for you again, saying that JBoss says, based on its network tuning, for processor, it expects to use Linux processors, like 86, 64 processors. It expects to use Red Hat to have a better performance. Then from application server, it will ask you to work with JBoss. From Java, it will expect to use Oracle JDK. Then from integration products, it asks you to use any database. So let's say Oracle database. Then it will say from messaging products, it will have better performance with IBM MQ. Then from LDAP, it will say as OID or Microsoft Active Directory. It says this will have any application running on these will have a better performance, best performance. Same way, WebSphere. Obviously, with its network tuning of that particular product, it will ask you to run on a IBM AIX. Then hardware, it will ask you to work with IBM. It comes under power systems. Then run IBM AIX. Then we'll ask you to run IBM JDK with WebSphere. So with this series of products, it has better performance. That's how every product vendor would differentiate. So from database, it will ask you to use IBM JDB2, but not Oracle DB. And from messaging, it might ask you to work with IBM MQ. Then any directory LDAP that it can work with. Same way WebSphere, WebLogic, with it says its own network tuning. It will ask you from hardware perspective, it will ask you to use Spark, or it will ask you to use Linux x86 64. So from a hardware, it doesn't make sense of Linux. It should be an operating system. Then operating system, Oracle Solaris or Oracle Linux. Then WebLogic as an application server. They will expect to use Oracle JDK only to have a better performance. Then it might be used instead of IBM. It will ask you to use Oracle Service Bus. Then OID. So if you see the series of products, the factors I was talking about, it could be an integration products, Java, application server, operating system, hardware, network. Every factor plays a vital role. Again, you can't have any static results because running your application which has been developed would differentiate appropriately. So having everything on these, just you want to run your, instead of WebLogic, just want to run Red Hat or JBoss or WebSphere. WebLogic might give better performance expecting because the series of products is what the differentiation could. So that's how you might talk about, or you might evaluate your performance of your product, any application server at any point of time. Now coming back to features. So here's a document for you I have which talks about this. Again, the difference between the products of your JBoss or WildFly. So this is the difference. So latest version 10.x, the one that I was talking about under WildFly, it supports Java Standard Edition, the JDKS 1.8, but the Enterprise Edition is 7 that it supports that. So you can look at the configuration over here. At any point of time, the older version supports appropriately in this fashion. And there are terminologies that I was earlier talking about. WildFly, JBoss, JBoss EAP. So earlier the term called JBoss AS is the proprietary of JBoss community. But where the WildFly is a renamed version for an open source that's been turned, that they have given the enhanced name. And Red Hat also played a vital role because that's an open partner for your community where the funding would be done to the community. But one thing can say Java, JBoss or WildFly is an purely Java compliant application server because it runs on open source. It runs on open source API that's been built in JDKs at any point of time. So the new runtime features, yes, you do have some certification. What's new in WildFly? Enterprise Edition certification is being supported with. That's the very first point. Where the specification, JSRs, Java specification requests, are being marked up as an implementation references with the latest versions. Then Undertow is one of the servers that they keep on working with. That they have, earlier we used to have JBoss web server as an integral product, but with the latest versions of 8 onwards, you do have Undertow as a web server being proprietary, being built with it. So this is a document that I keep on working with exclusively. I just gave a look at it so that we'll be understanding. This is one documentation that we keep on sharing with you after the sessions at any point of time. So from the regular sessions perspective, it's a 1-hour session, 6 days a week. And we'll have something around 24 to 30 hours duration. We're going to work with RHEL, Linux, and Windows as well, just to make sure that there's no difference between them. Then we're going to work with WildFly 10 version. BSP is going to provide you the documentation once you're registered. This is a customized document from the and we also added, if you exclusively you might have looked at the BSP website. So we have added few the content has already been published over here. We have added few series of stuff which helps you to do a runtime monitoring. So the JVM tools has been added to it, and tuning has been added as well, and patching and upgrades also been added to it. So this gives you an overall knowledge about your runtime environments practically. It gives you an knowledge about it. Let me know if you have any questions right now. We'll talk about securing your domain controller, host controller. And we're going to talk about protecting your passwords as well. Then we're going to focus on SSL, secure socket layer. We're going to install the certificates. We're going to have a custom certificates configuration parallelly to work with it.